Welcome in. If your project management workflow falls apart as soon as you have to switch tools, there's probably a problem with your workflow. Today on the operating room, we're going to talk about a case where PM runs some shadow IT tools to avoid using Microsoft tools. We'll talk about a consultant who's upset over some fixed bid contracts because they don't want to stand up to their sales department. And then we're going to talk about a level one incident that devolves into a yelling, crying, arguing fit between a project manager, an account manager, and a director. Let's get into it. So, we're going to start today with the case of acute spinelessness. I'm going to read this one to you from Reddit. My world is typical as a PM for a digital transformation consulting company. Mid seven figure, fixed bid contracts, aggressive timelines with an offshore tech team. Due to the nature of fixed bid contracts and the associated burn rate, there's always a huge rush to get discovery over with and start developing. Even though we do run agile, it's not pure agile. It's what is practical for us and our clients. Discovery has always been challenging for us as it's never given the appropriate time by the sales team who sells the contracts. And yes, I know I'm supposed to tell them that we need longer and we want a voice in the pre sales department, but let's face it, in my field, the salespeople do what they do and we have no input. Our integration changes the way the whole business works. For this reason, the clients will always have a lot of questions about processes and how they can change the processes. The decisions made in discovery are the basis of our implementation. What are some tips and tricks you've used successfully or stumbled upon by accident that help facilitate efficient discovery sessions? I'm thinking about stuff outside the box, real world solutions that you can't find in books. Please don't tell me to speak to the sponsor or to escalate to leadership. Not looking for any canned responses. Thanks, all. All right, so we have some parameters as far as what answers we're allowed to give and not give, but we will work around that. All right, so what are the actual problems here? So the first one is the obvious one is the team doesn't have enough time for discovery. And why is that? Well, the reason is that really two reasons. I think the first one is that because their tech team is not included in the sales process, but two is because they're using fixed price contracts, there's all this time pressure. And we'll talk more about that later, but those are really the two big ones for me. Second is the discovery sessions are inefficient. And I think that's happening because we're not establishing a baseline quickly enough, right? So, and what I mean by that is, if you allow it, a discovery session and session series can carry on for 5 to 10 sessions if you allow it. However, if you get requirements in session one and you come back in session two with something they can see, whether that's a mock up or even better, a prototype, then all of a sudden the conversation changes and they can tell you, hey, I like this, I don't like this works for our workflow, this doesn't. And all of a sudden everything changes because then everybody knows what they expect. Then those discovery sessions are just refinement sessions to get that prototype and then you can go execute it. So that's what I think is really missing here is I'm just envisioning that they're spending too much time talking abstractly about requirements and not getting visual stuff in front of them. Even if that's a mock-up, I think that's the big thing. And that comes into solutions a little bit, but that's what I think isn't happening here. And then the third problem is the fixed price contracts are creating internal pressure. So touched on that a little bit, but the reality is when you go into a fixed price contract as a company, you are saying, okay, we know what the scope is, and we believe that we can make our profit margin or more than our normal profit margin by offering this at a fixed price. And that creates a lot of pressure. It creates pressure to one internally to make sure that your scope stays controlled so that your resource costs stay static essentially and don't exceed what you're expecting. That's one. And so that's the big thing with a fixed price contract is you really have to manage scope, you really have to manage time, or else you're going to lose your shirt. And I think the reason that that's happening is just what I said. We have the financial risk, the contract vehicle, and then there's no research and development. So you have all this internal pressure coming from those three factors that we touched on. All right, so how are we going to fix this? So I think the first thing is, and this PM said we're not allowed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. You have to work with the sales team. You have to step up. You have to, to be direct. You have to grow a spine and stand up for the team. You're as a PM, you are a representative of the team. The team is not being served properly by this process, and so you have to stand up for them. And if the sales team says no, we're not going to allow someone from your team to be involved in our sales and pre-sales process, then you escalate it. And really, the escalation should be quite easy because we already have the pressure from the higher ups to say you got to move faster. We can't spend time on discovery. We got to get this work executed so we can bill for it. So this is very simple. You can tell them that if we get involved in the pre-sales process, there's going to be a lot less time that we have to spend on discovery, and it's going to save us time once we get past discovery in execution, because now we know what we're working against. We know those pitfalls that might come up. We've planned for it. It should be a very easy win to convince an executive of that change in process. So to me, this is really the best solution. And I'm going to suggest other solutions, but this is absolutely what I would do. And if the sales team doesn't like it, fine, escalate. And I've said before, I don't believe in immediate escalations, but for me, this is one where I think it's necessary because it's really hurting the team and it's putting too much mental stress on the team. The second solution for me is getting these mock-ups and prototypes in early. I talked about this already, right? Is we have to get stuff in their hands quickly. That's going to help you to identify these gaps. That's going to help to cut down on this discovery time and this requirement time. We have to get stuff in front of them. That is a core agile concept. This is software development. This is what agile was invented for. Get the prototypes in front of them, less requirements gathering and more showing and telling. You showing them the product, them telling you what they like and don't like, then you iterate. That's it. And then solution three is if I were in this PM shoes, I would start documenting where the actual scope of work that we got from sales versus the scope of work that is actually happening inside the project, and put that in a change log and make sure that you have that. And it's not just CYA, and obviously will help if you do have to escalate, but it's also a good point to understand. And let's say the process doesn't change. Let's say you escalate and they say no. Then at least you have the data to go back to sales and say, hey, this is what was missed. This is what you gave us. This is what you didn't give us, but we had to do. And this is what needs to happen in the future. So it's really a three-pronged thing that it will help with. So I think you have to get that change log and really identify those gaps. All right, so that was the acute spinelessness case. Let's get into case number 2 today, which is platform rejection. I started a new job, and that means new tools. I had been using Asana. I made the switch to ClickUp to try to get a little more out of it. I'm not sure how long I'll be able to use that. There were some comments that the site may get blocked, but I'd imagine if that was the case, I can't be the first one to try to use it, so it probably already had been blocked. But I also use Claude a lot to take data and analyze it and help me look for trends. They have a pretty strict AI policy. I can only use Copilot, which kind of blows. So I'm wondering if any of you live in the Microsoft suite to do everything. I was thinking Excel or possibly a Word doc per project with just bullet points for tasks and notes below, or maybe Microsoft Project. If you have suggestions and screenshots of examples of what you're doing, I'd be much obliged. I need some ideas. So, at surface level, you might think that this is, a pretty open and shut case, but there is some nuance here to it that I think is important to look at. So let's get into it. So the first problem is the PM is using tools that aren't approved by the company. Asana is not approved, ClickUp is not approved, and Claude is not approved. Why are they doing this? Well, I think it's very obvious that this PM doesn't understand IT security policy. They are working in a secure environment. Many secure environments, as I've worked in the past, are very much strict about what sites you can and can't use, and they have reasons for that. They have reasons based on vulnerabilities that the security teams have identified and overall policies that they have. and they expect people to follow them. So, this PM is saying, okay, well, these are the tools I'm used to, so this is what I'm using. And that doesn't show an understanding of the company security policy. Problem two is this PM doesn't like the Microsoft tools. So we heard, oh well, Copilot blows and all that. And where is that coming from? I think it's coming from a lack of experience. When you're talking about like this PM did, is using it to analyze data and see trends. My experience has been that when it comes to coding, Claude has the edge over everything else. When it comes to the other stuff, I find that gap to be a lot smaller. Again, my experience, my opinion, I use them all. That's what I have seen. I don't think the gap between Copilot and Claude is that great to say that Copilot blows. And I question if this person has even tried to do the same work in Copilot, or if they're just saying, "I want to use my tools because that's what I did in my last job." That's what it feels like. It feels like they don't have experience in the Microsoft tools, so they're saying, "Oh, I don't like them." Problem three is really the most interesting one is that, and kind of this is what we start off the show with, is the PM's workflow gets completely paralyzed outside of Asana. And it's like they've completely like frozen up. It's like, okay, well, in Asana, we create tickets and we move them around the board. And now they want to say, well, if I put it in Word, then I'm going to have bullet points with notes under it. I mean, that's not even anything close to a one-to-one. That's completely reinventing your workflow and sending it back to the dark ages. I mean, it's just really interesting, to say the least. And why is that happening? Well, I think this PM is stuck in a mindset that the tools matter, right? Process is process. I have as much preferences as anyone else when it comes to tools. I mean, there are tools that I think are quote unquote better than others, but not to the point where it's going to change how I operate. It's not going to change how tasks get written. And most of the tools are customizable enough that it can bend to the workflow that the team prefers to use. And that's the key thing here, is it's about the team's workflow. It's not about the PM's preference of tools, right? So those are kind of the big things for me, is, really the tools don't matter. You really should be able to have an effective workflow in any tool. And yes, some are going to fit a team's workflow better, and that can be addressed. But ultimately, it shouldn't be something where, oh, I can't use Asana and I can't use ClickUp, so now I'm just completely lost on what to do. That's a problem in process for me, and this workflow. And it's a surprising one to me. And this is coming from someone who's used, I don't know, 20 plus different, probably more than that, 25 plus different PM tools over my 16 years. All right, so how do we fix it? So first thing I would advise this PM to do is to stop putting themselves and the company at risk by using tools that are not allowed. So we heard that. We heard that this PM was told by someone that, hey, that tool is going to get blocked. Stop using it. You're told that it's not allowed, so stop using it. Why do you continue to use it when you're told to not use those three tools? You're told not to use Asana, you're told not to use ClickUp, and you're told not to use Claude, and you keep doing it. So stop doing it. You're putting your company at risk. You're putting yourself at risk by doing that. Solution two is research and learn the options that are available within Office 365 and the Microsoft universe, right? So we have Microsoft Planner, which is the most comparable to Asana and ClickUp. And we heard Project, which this PM did mention in their post. In this case, from everything that I'm hearing, if this PM has used Asana and ClickUp, the answer is Planner. So I would research Planner and learn what is available in Planner. I think this PM would find that it's a lot more of a one-to-one than they think. They don't have to create this Word document with bullet points. I mean, that just sounds really, really challenging. I don't know how you manage and track that. That's really difficult. I just can't imagine doing it that way. So I think MS Planner is the answer here. And the reason I say that over Project is because Project is better with a lot bigger projects. And it doesn't sound like, I mean, if it's even possible to manage this in Word, then it's not big enough that it needs to go into something as complex as Project, which is great for program and portfolio level stuff. But in my opinion, not great for smaller projects, which is what this sounds like to me. So, and Project was, when I first came into this, I mean, it was the standard, but it's not, it's changed as Agile has taken a front seat, and project does not lend itself as well to Agile as a lot of other tools, in my opinion. And then solution three is, if you do this research and if you work with a team and they say, hey, we can't get our workflow into Planner, then you can submit what would be an access request to get access to whatever it is, Asana or ClickUp or whatever. And that's how it's worked in secure environments I've worked in. If you need something unblocked, you can submit a request with a business justification for it. But to me, it doesn't sound like we're there yet. Sounds like we just have a mental block on, hey, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to do it, and we're not getting there. So that is the case of platform rejection. All right, let's get into case three today, which is panic outbreak. I'm a project manager for a small tech company. There has been a severe incident with a high profile client for our company that is creating major issues and pressure coming from up top. This issue has been a snowball effect that started with the help desk and has been going on for almost 2 weeks. My team and I were made aware of this 2 days ago and immediately stepped in to assist with the root cause analysis and overall fix. My director has been gone for the entirety of this and has called a meeting this morning to go over fixing this immediately so he doesn't get fired. He started insisting that the best way to fix this is to have one person work on everything. So he said my developer, who I assigned to work on this, should take all of the tickets for this client that seem related to this, including basic end user troubleshooting or information gathering tickets, which could be handled by anyone. The developer complained to me about it the day before, for good reason, because he is a developer and does not work troubleshooting help desk tickets. I told my director that was not the appropriate use of this resource, and it's not possible for him to investigate and fix the primary issues while also calling every user with an issue that may or may not be related, especially when those issues can be immediately addressed by someone on the help desk. He then insisted that I do it, to which I said no. Not only do I not have the bandwidth, but I also don't have the knowledge or skill set for the work, as I'm a project manager. He completely lost it on me and yelled at me in front of everyone in that meeting in a way that made me question my job security. I ended up leaving that meeting frustrated, and my manager came over to give me some sweet motivational stickers. I immediately started crying in front of my team, which was embarrassing. I explained that I cry when I get overwhelmed, which I do. Then I calmed down and took an early lunch to step away and clear my mind, but continued crying when I got back and have been met with continued hostility from my director. I ended up going home because I was so upset. For some background, this is the third instance in the last week where I've been met with hostility from a coworker. One instance was yesterday from my engineer because he was upset about the task assigned. He gets visibly upset and will slam things. This is not abnormal, but does wear on me. I try to keep my team happy, and in those instances, I don't know how to do that when the work needs to get done, but the only person to do it doesn't want to. Additionally, the account manager approached me to question why I was not approving a quote based on the information he provided, which ended in him questioning why I just can't show up on site with the hardware and figure out what to do with it then. This resulted in him telling me he would do my job if he had to, because I told him that I couldn't properly execute a project like that, and if he thinks he can do it better, he can go ahead. He then got frustrated and stormed off mid-conversation. My manager was aware of this. I've brought these issues up repeatedly, and it seems I'm always expected to be better, to be a better team player, to take the steps to address the behavior with the person. I don't feel comfortable having to address behavior issues of that level of severity by myself. Anyways, I'm now concerned about my job security and overall feeling like people think I'm at fault for pushing back to stand up for my team who wasn't present in the meeting. I feel I could have done better standing up to my director on these demands, but I still stand firm on my boundaries of my team and myself. Sorry for the long post, but if you made it this far, please help a girl out. What do I do? How do I handle this? All right. So first, let me say I feel really bad for this PM. This is a really tough situation. Project management is a really hard job. We end up taking a lot of stuff. And when you're the first line, you're the first line who gets the fire, and that's what happened here. And it's something where it just accumulates, and it sounds like this person just got pushed and pushed and pushed, and then they broke down. It's understandable, and I feel really really bad for them. But let's try to help, and let's take a balanced look at this one and see what we can do. So the first problem is the director is panicked because of this client issue. So, this client issue has been going on for 2 weeks, and I'm assuming that this client got frustrated, understandably, if it's a major level one issue for 2 weeks. Um, they call the director, they were upset, and then the director projects the panic. Why is that happening? Well, I don't. The PM said they thought it was because the director is worried about losing their job. I actually think the director is concerned about the loss of revenue if that client decides to go elsewhere for their support needs. It sounds to me like that's the bigger case. Normally a client isn't going to say, "Hey, we want this director fired." Normally they're going to say, "Hey, we're not happy. We're going to take our business elsewhere." So that's what I think. Again, it's an assumption on my part, but that's based on my experience. That's what I believe. The next one is the PM is overwhelmed by the stress of the situation. So we heard about the crying and then coming back, and again feel really bad for them. And where is this coming from? So I think, in my opinion, this has just been a massive domino effect. So we started at the top. The client gets upset. Then the client goes to the director and they get upset. The director has a choice. The director can work with the team in a calm and pragmatic way, or they can come in fire and brimstone. And it sounds like they opted for the latter. They went in fire and brimstone and went off on this PM. This PM fired back. The account manager and PM, they fired back and forth at each other. Then we have the engineer who's slamming things. So this is all just this massive domino effect, one on top of the other on top of the other. I think this particular issue, though, the root cause of it is that there's a lack of formal incident response. And for those who are unfamiliar, in IT support situations, you have like incident response protocol where if an issue is reported and it's diagnosed to triage to be a certain level, in this case, like level one, then basically it gets immediate response. Say it's like, 4-hour response time or 2-hour response time. That's how it gets prioritized. So that seems to not exist at this company at all. It seems like, for 2 weeks, it just kind of hung out and the help desk was working on it. And then after 12 days, then the project team was brought into it. And then 2 more days later, then the director gets brought into it. So just a complete failure there as far as having proper process in place. The next problem is we heard that the director and the account manager got upset with the PM, which caused the emotional response. And I feel bad. I feel bad saying this, but I have to be truthful and honest. Is I think the root cause here is that the PM communicated poorly and ineffectively. Um, it's hard. Again, this person was clearly stressed, and I feel really bad for her. But what happened was the director was looking for solutions. He said, "Okay, we have this engineer. We're going to have him work on it. He's going to take ownership of everything related to it." And this PM said, "No, he doesn't have the bandwidth to do that. That's a poor use of this resource." And so the director fires back and says, "Okay, well, if you don't want him to do it, then you do it. Then these users, you talk to them, you figure out what's happening." Then the PM says, "No, I'm not doing it. I don't have the skill set for it. I don't have the time for it." So the director is looking for solutions, and the PM is just saying, "No, no, 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 no." Well, that's why he got upset. He got upset because he needs to find a solution to save the relationship with the client and preserve that revenue stream for the company. And he's not getting any cooperation in his eyes because all he's hearing is no, 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 not. I'm not sure. What I would do, and we'll talk about this later in solutions, is what I would do is say, we can do that, but this is what will happen. That's the appropriate response. No, 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 no. That's going to trigger this kind of response, especially with leadership. Not all leaders, but I've been at it a long time, and that's what I have seen. So I would not approach it that way, and I think that's what caused it. And we heard about the same thing with the account manager, right? That's another case where this PM, in my opinion, communicated really poorly. The account manager is pressing for this work to be done. It sounds like there's some kind of hardware that they're waiting for to be approved by this PM. This PM has some kind of process. The account manager says, "Hey, I just want you to skip the process and just get on site and figure it out." And this PM says, "Well, if you don't like it, you can do it yourself." Then the account manager goes off and says, "Well, if I have to do your job, I will." And it goes from there. But from what was reported in the post, the PM initiated that hostility by saying, if you don't like how I'm doing it, do it yourself. So again, I think it's really just, again, I understand it's a really hard job and this was a really hard situation, but I think that communication in both cases was really poor. Problem four is we heard this at the end, is the PM is worried about their job security. And I think the reason why they could be concerned about it is because their responses have created not resolved conflict, right? And I touched on that pretty extensively when we talked about the director looking for answers, right? He's looking at this PM for answers, and rather than answers, she's just giving him more problems, right? And so he starts at solution one with having the engineer. She says no. Then he starts at solution two, having her do it. She says no. So it's just creating more problems than solutions. Account manager, they're just looking to get their commission, get their client satisfied. Again, PM said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm doing it this way. So it's just creating more conflict rather than solutions. And I feel terrible that they're upset about it, but I think there are some things that they can do better. And it's hard. It's hard to absorb and absorb and absorb and absorb and not push back. But you can also push back, but you just have to do it in a really measured way. Telling somebody to go do it themselves is not measured. Telling somebody no when they offer alternatives is not measured. It's not being solution oriented. So that's what I see there as the core thing. All right, how do we fix it? So we touched on a little bit of this, but first one is you have to offer trade-offs to requesters instead of just requesting it, right? And I started to explain this, but I'll explain it more now. So when that director is saying put the engineer on everything, and the PM is saying no, the help desk can do part of it, the response I would give is yes, he can absolutely do that. However, if he does that, he's going to need to log 2 hours of overtime per day if he's able to do it, and I'll have to confirm with him that he's able to do it. And he also won't be able to work on this feature that he was supposed to work on this week, or this other client project that he was supposed to work on this week as well. If that's okay, we'll move forward, but I just want you to be aware of what's going on and what the trade-offs will be. And that's the answer. That's how you approach it. You don't just say no, no, no. You say yes, but do you want us to do this? And you have to be very clear, right? Because a lot of times what they'll hear is, okay, you're saying yes, so yes, just do it. So, but you have to make sure you're clear. You have to make sure it's very explicit what those trade-offs are going to be. And also, the cost benefit wraps into this as well, right? Is yes, the benefit of this is the client is satisfied and we preserve the client's business. The cost of this is that other clients' work is now going to be delayed, right? So that's what they need to hear. And there's also opportunity cost, right? There's, okay, well, if a new project comes in, then we can't do it. So all of that needs to be made clear, and didn't happen here. Solution two is I would speak with the director and the account manager to repair the relationships. It sounds like, well, the director was hostile after the fact. If it were me, I would go to the director and say, hey, I was thinking about our meeting the other day, and I should have been more solution oriented rather than just outright rejecting what you were asking. I'm sure the client is putting a lot of pressure on you. And in the future, I'm going to try to focus on offering alternatives instead of just rejecting what you're asking. That's it. That's it. Sometimes we have to fall on the sword as PMs. Do I think this PM was completely at fault for this? No, I don't. I think the director came in hot. I think the director got this PM very upset. It sounds like the director, yelling at this PM, that's completely unacceptable. But that's what I would do. I would try to repair the relationship. But again, I don't agree with for me, there's no reason for yelling. The next is the account manager. Again, I think this one, I don't think there's a lot of doubt as to who's to blame here. I think this was the PM just saying, if you don't like it, do it yourself. That's a really non-collaborative approach. And I think the PM needs to go and apologize to that account manager. Again, we don't have context. We don't have all the context, but the context we do have, made it pretty clear that's what happened. Um, the next thing I would do is, and maybe this might be the most important one for me, is we heard about this engineer who, when they get assigned a task, they start slamming things. That needs to be escalated to management and HR immediately. That's not acceptable. It's not acceptable to have a physical reaction to being assigned work as part of your job. This PM should not have to deal with that. This PM should not be worried about assigning work to this engineer because they're going to react in a physically violent way. That needs to be immediately reported. That is completely unacceptable. There's just no way that anybody should have to deal with that. That's this PM said, "Oh, it's not abnormal." It is. It is abnormal. Let's not normalize that kind of behavior. This is a work environment. People need to behave professionally. Slamming stuff on your desk every time you get assigned a task is not appropriate, and that needs to be escalated. And then the last one is, I think what this PM is, I would imagine that this PM is loved by their team. And the reason I say that is because they advocated really hard for their team in all these cases, right? They went in, they pushed back on this director who was putting the team especially one team member in a really bad spot. They didn't do it the right way, but I think that's great. So what I would do is I would continue to advocate for the team and stand up for yourself, but it has to be in a way that shows that you're supporting the organization. And that's what got lost here. Is it looked like it was, not supporting the organization. It was not understanding this director's dilemma. It wasn't just about what this PM thought about him trying to save his own skin. I don't believe. He's trying to satisfy this client, and really that should be everybody's goal, is to satisfy our customers as much as we can. All right. So before we get into the lessons learned from today, what we learned, I do want to give a quick update. So we talked about the case. We did a standalone case file last week, and then on episode 5, we talked about this case of the misdiagnosed authority with the PM who was a new PM. He had 10 years of experience in engineering, and he came into this 16-week small agency project in essentially week 5, and they were in week 9 at that point. And for those 4 weeks, he had just been constantly having issues with the lead and senior dev. It's just pushback after pushback. This project manager thought he should be, directing everything, right? They should just be doing whatever he says. They should be, when it comes to, code reviews, when it comes to how code is written, all of that, the PM felt was in their scope. And I had pretty strong reaction to that. For me, I said, I thought this PM needed to drop the ego, needed to focus on working with the team collaboratively, needed to work with the team more respectfully, and needed to focus solely on satisfying that client in the remaining 7 weeks of the project. So yesterday, the PM posted again on the subreddit, and the headline was "Fired after 10 weeks on a 16-week project." And I felt terrible for this person. I didn't agree with the approach. Obviously, I don't agree with treating people that way. I don't think the PM should ever be leading by authority. I think it should be by influence and by example. But I still felt really bad. And what happened was, so all this strife continued. So there was an incident where one of the members of the team, QA member of the team, didn't do something the way the PM wanted. And the PM just went completely lambasted them in the Slack in front of the whole team, and that was reported to management. And the other team members really had a big problem with the way this PM treated that team member. Throughout that process, throughout those next few weeks, the strife between the PM, the lead, and the senior dev continued. None of them could get along. It was arguing. This PM is just, as he admitted in this post, he's telling them what to do. He's barking orders, and the team keeps fighting back. According to this PM, the lead dev went and talked to the COO, and in the PM's inference and kind of what they were told, said it's me or him. So the PM gets called into the COO's office. The COO tells the PM that, hey, the project's in a good place. We appreciate that there's some good progress on it, that the client extended our contract. However, the conflicts with you and the team are untenable. The way you've treated the team on the soft skill side is not consistent with our culture, so we're letting you go. The PM's reaction was to, in his own words, quote, go ballistic on the COO about how much work the PM did, about how difficult the senior and lead devs were to work with, about how they were the reason that the project got extended. They did all this work, they put in all this time, and they went ballistic on this person. And it's just a really it's just a really sad situation. Someone loses their job. I mean, this person obviously is passionate, right? They're passionate about what they do. They're just going about it in all the wrong ways. And it's just unfortunate. I feel terrible when somebody loses their job, but you know, again, I just don't understand how, like this case, a new PM comes in and he thinks, hey, I gotta come in, fully loaded and boss people around. I mean, that's exactly what he said. And I did reach out. I reached out, and unfortunately, it wasn't well received. I said, hey, I'm really sorry that you lost your job. I think in the future it's really important to focus on servant leadership and putting the team first, and leaving the ego behind, and really fostering relationships, building trust, working collaboratively. And I understand he was just, fired a few days prior and he just didn't want to hear it. And that's fine. But, so anyway, just an update. I thought that was one of the more interesting cases that we worked on. So just a real quick recap today of the cases and what we learned. So in the case of acute spinelessness, we just talked about the contagious panic, right? Where the PM was advocating for the team so fiercely that they caused the director to completely go off on them. Then we have this case, the first case of acute spinelessness, where the PM won't advocate for the team. And because they won't advocate for the team when it comes to the sales process, now they want to try to, come up with these other processes and, oh, don't tell me to escalate, and all this stuff, rather than doing the right thing by the team. So we have a case where a PM is advocating for the team in a great way. And then we have a case here where this person is not advocating for the team at all. And so we want to create like some extra process to not do the right thing. So that's what I take from it, is we have to advocate for our teams where appropriate, especially internally. It's very easy. We heard about the fact that the management is upset that the costs are where they are. So it's a very easy thing to say, yeah, you want cost improved, get us involved earlier in the process, and we can bring these costs down 10%, 20%, or reduce our discovery time by 50%. That's it. Um, so contagious panic, what can we take from that? Is even if we have the best intentions possible, we still have to be careful in how we deliver bad news, right? And I mean, I've been in that position tons of times where you have to say no, but you have to deliver it in the right way. You have to deliver alternatives. You can't just say no, 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 no. You have to say, yeah, we can do it, but then this happens. And that's where people can understand. If you just say no flat like that, that's where the problems come in. So we just have to make sure that we are cushioning what we say, even when our intentions are as good as this PM's intentions were. And then kind of working a little bit backwards is the platform rejection case. Is one of the core things about project management that I don't think gets discussed enough is being adaptable. And I've talked about it, but I think we have to be able to adapt to new circumstances and a new environment. We can't come in and say, well, in my last job, I used Claude and Asana and ClickUp, so I have to use it here, even though there's an IT security policy against it. And that's what got missed. That's the big core problem here. So again, that's what I learned. Hopefully you learned something. If you do have feedback, or you have a case, or you just want to discuss something, email address is in the description, but it's pmor@illyriansolutions.com. I know it's a long one, but it is in the description. I appreciate you watching and listening, and hope you have a great day. Thank you.